Unfortunately, I don't know my parents because I was orphaned before I was 3. Both of them died. So I was brought up by my mother's mother on the west coast of Demerara, which was a sugar plantation. In the village, I would say that everyone was in some way connected with sugar. Sugar informed the village. Sugar, even if you did not directly work into sugar, you did all the other things that sugar did. Therefore, my grandfather was a punt captain. He was captain of one of those barges that took the sugar from the plantation when it was made and took it across the short path of the Atlantic Ocean to the big wharves where the sugar was then shipped to England. The Demerara sugar was shipped to England. So everybody was either serving that industry in some way or the other, in either in working for the people who managed it, or being wives of the sailors. All my family were wives of the sailors, or doing something where sugar was, as I said, sugar was king in those days. And so King Sugar ruled everything and it was a seasonal crop, of course. So in the good times, everybody flourished, and in the bad times, you kind of subsidized by, we had little farms.
I went to school in Johor Bahru. It was called Government English School, Johor Bahru. Yes, I did wear uniform to school. It was a white shirt and a blue trousers, blue shorts. And we used to start school at about 7:45. Over there, we start very early, quite early, and finished about 12:30. And early morning when we go down to school, we used to have the first thing was the assembly. Anybody who is late, we used to try and hide ourselves somewhere back to it. And when the assembly line people are going back to the classes, we used to follow them, join the queue and get in. We learned English, all of the subjects they were English in the primary classes, and not the language. We had to learn a language when we went up to Form 1. We had to do the Malay language, the local language over there. That was compulsory to pass our test. You got to pass the language to pass your... If you don't pass the language test, you fail the whole test, is it? I was about 17 when I left school. On my 18th birthday, I enlisted into the British Army in Singapore and did my basic training in Nee Soon Garrison, Singapore. 16 weeks basic training. And from there I was posted on to my unit, Royal Signals. I was with 19th Signal Regiment in Ayer Rajah Road, Singapore. And did my trade training, 6 weeks, in OSB Operative Switchboard, grade 3. And was posted to Pasir Panjang Exchange and worked there for some time and transferred on to Fort Canning. It's a well-known Fort Canning. All the high-ranking officers, only smart soldiers were transferred to the camp, you see.
Right. My father was a pilot. He was just working for Aeroflot. Yeah, flying these planes. Tupolev 154. And it's very safe. And my mom, she's a engineer, and she's like a drawing engineer. I go to school in far east of Russia, in a town called Khabarovsk. It's very near to China and Japan and Vladivostok. I was born in Urals, and 1 year old, because father is a pilot, I moved to Vilnius, to Latvia, for 2 years. And then from Vilnius, we moved to Khabarovsk, it's far east. It's about 9 hours flying. Yeah, and then when I was about 9, we moved to Moscow. And then from 9 years old, I was living in Moscow and went to school there. I mean, lots of different lessons. I mean, I learned English from, we started to learn English from 10. And we was actually learning the geography of different countries. And as well, we learning all this political. I went to Moscow Power Engineering University, and it's institute, we call it. And I am electrical mechanical engineer. After I finished university, I stayed there and did a research project, did a PhD there, carry on study. And I was a part-time lecturer there.
I went to school in the same place where I was born, continued my primary, secondary and also university education in the same place. It was a primary school aided by the government, run by the government, and the school was meant for not only giving an education, it also used to give a trade.
What did you study at university?
I studied science. For 4 years I was in the university. After I left university, I joined the School of Medicine and I completed my basic degree of medicine and surgery. That goes for about 5 years. Then after 1 year you have to complete your house surgeoncy to be trained in the various hospitals, and then you are fully qualified. I worked for 2 years in the government services, and then I moved to Africa. I spent in Africa for almost 20 years, and then after spending 20 years in Africa, then I moved to Middle East. I was based in Dubai.
I was actually in the midst of apartheid in South Africa. We were very, very protected by our parents. They didn't expose us to anything that we thought would hurt our feelings or, stuff like that. We often went, because we lived in a hot country and right by the beach, and there was like designated areas, whites only, Indians only. They kind of classed us as Indians, even though people were from different countries. But if we kind of looked like this, and when we went to go and register birth kind of thing, they classified you and the black people. So there was all designated recreational areas. We never had anything mixed when we were growing up. Quite often as a kid, you'd say to your dad, like, why can't we go and play there? And they'd always say, oh no, next time, or there's no time, or we can't park here, or some kind of excuse. They never let on that because we were different and we were not allowed. They didn't want us to get involved in feeling excluded, if you like. We kind of found out a lot more as we got older and wiser. Our parents never ever taught us not to like the white man or they doing bad things, or until we kind of realized, how difficult it was for them and for us, and even my husband for that matter. Was a very, very bright lad academically, and he was fortunate that he got a place in university. But we had to have 7 subjects in our A-levels. And you had to have all A's to get in, to do anything. And then when he graduated, the cheek of it was they had 2 graduations, one for whites, and he never ever graduated. And they all refused to go because, and a lot of their white students and that also boycotted it. So it was just a few that probably enjoyed the apartheid regime that went and got their certificates and got gowned and capped and whatever. And we also lived in areas, we were moved from beautiful homes. When the Group Areas Act came in, there was a thing called group areas, so we all grouped into areas of likeness, so we couldn't mingle with anybody else. So in school, we didn't have one black child in our school or a white child. We only had us, and they only had them. So there was no integration at all.